All right, Cat fam, it's once again time for our Alumni Spotlight. We dig again into the Alumni Vault and pulled out a treasured alumni from Capital University. We've been hitting football pretty heavy, we know this, but our next guest is someone that we really believe that you are going to enjoy hearing from. And we want to welcome to the podcast Mr. James Starks, class of 2008, a two-time All-American and one of the guiding pieces on the defenses that led the Crusaders to 3 consecutive NCAA playoff appearances. So James, first of all, welcome to the program. And I know it's kind of weird for you being on the other side of the camera. I know I'm going to have to step my game up just for you. So thanks for joining us. And you're in the middle of a, professional transition of sorts. Just kind of tell us what you've been doing for the past couple of years.
So first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be discussing anything with my alma mater. It's always been a dream of mine to kind of come back and at least just talk about, how things were a while ago. So thank you again for having me. But right now, I'm the morning news anchor at WZZM in Grand Rapids. So before that, I was actually working in Houston, Texas for the NBC affiliate doing sports. So we made the transition from sports to news, and right now, as you kind of catch me here, as we spoke it off air, I'm already in another career transition as well. So I'll be switching things up and leaving Grand Rapids in a few weeks now.
Well, we wish you the best of luck and congratulations on that new gig. And like I said, we're going to have to step it up because you're a guy that has a lot of personality, and it comes out in those morning hours. You definitely are a lot more peppy than I am right now. I know I'm faking it to make it, but this is, I think, your natural habitat.
Yeah, I'm not too shabby. I get up at 1:30 most mornings, which is a little silly, but I try to get a workout in before I go into work at 3 a.m. And usually working out before working kind of knocks the cobwebs out a little bit. So this is pretty much the back end of my work day. So I'm gonna probably be petering off here as we close up shop on this one.
Very good. Now, can you tell us very much about this new opportunity? You're coming back to the Buckeye State, coming back to Toledo. What can you share about that?
I can tell you pretty much everything because we got some good timing. So the press releases just went out about 48 hours ago. So I'll be going back to my hometown of Toledo, Ohio, and I'll be taking over as the morning news anchor at WTVG 13 Action News. I started there in January, and so it's been a long process, as you know, with everyone this year has been kind of topsy-turvy and upside down. But the hiring process has taken, usually more longer than it typically does. But my family's very excited to have me back in Toledo full time, and my friends are as well. So it's a great chance to go back to my hometown and engage in the same kind of community service that I do here, but do it full time in Toledo.
It's about your academic pursuits at Capital. Where was the desire to be a journalist born?
Didn't start at Capital. It started at the breakfast table in somewhere in the 2000s, getting ready for school. So my parents would have the station I'm going to now, coincidentally, was the station I watched as a child. And the evening anchors, they might not like me telling this, but the evening anchors then are still there now. So it's a strong legacy station. So I'd watch Diane Larson and Lee Conklin. I watched that program, though, in the morning, even though they worked at night. But I would also watch Sports Center, RIP to Stuart Scott. And just watching Stuart Scott every morning, watching Sports Center was like, maybe this is something I can do. I don't know. And a quick story, watching Stuart Scott, when I was working with NBC in Houston, I had a game to cover in Jacksonville, Texans Jags, and I saw a story in my hotel room the night before the game. It was a story that Stuart was doing about an MMA fighter who had Down syndrome, or who was autistic rather. And Stuart was just coming off of chemo from his liver cancer, or pancreatic cancer rather. And I was watching the story, and it was just the way he did the story. And I remember tweeting at Stuart Scott, like, hey, amazing way of telling a story. And he tweeted back at me. So for me, it was super cool to kind of watch Stuart Scott as a kid and then have this really quick interaction with him as an adult in the exact same business at a top 10 market. So that kind of paired with, I think I want to do this. And then we started to do kind of like closed circuit TV announcements at my high school, where you just kind of like do this, read this paper and kind of go. So that's where it started, man. And then when I got the cap, I did some interning at WBNS in Columbus as well. So I thought it was something that I could be good at, but I don't think I knew my potential at Capital. I think that came much later down the road.
Talk about some of the other places that you interned at or even have stopped at along the way.
So I interned again at WBNS in Columbus back when ONN was a thing. So I used to work with Dom Tiberi and Dan Franzak. Thank you for that letter of recommendation, Dan. I have not forgotten about that. And I did that. So I covered like the Crew and Ohio State stuff because it had to be in the summer, but before our football started. And then also in graduate school, I'd interned at WKBN in Youngstown. So I was doing that. I've done sideline reporting for Fox. I filled in on a sports show for WOIO in Cleveland while I was also in grad school. Oh, man. And then, of course, I did radio at Capital. I did radio at Capital with Matt Waddell. Matt Waddell brought me in to do color. So we did that for like 2 seasons. So I've kind of been in the broadcast game for quite a bit now.
Well, and you also started, from my understanding, in sports journalism, or at least you had a heavy hand in sports journalism, and then you transitioned into what we'll call news or
Sure.
So talk about why make that transition and maybe what some of the biggest differences are between sports and just general news.
I think a lot of people think that when you work in sports as a sports anchor, especially in a major market like Houston was, like, oh, man, you got the life. I'm like, no, I travel every week. I legit travel every week. And as much as I love, being at, NBA playoff games or the NFL draft or the World Series, so on and so forth, I think the work-life balance wasn't working for me. So I was essentially paying rent to go to sleep. So the times I'd get off the road after 4 days, be home for 36 hours, I got to go to the next thing because Houston covers everything. So I knew if I wanted to stay in this business, and I got out the business, if I wanted to stay in news or get back into news, it couldn't be in sports anymore because I kind of got burnt out. So I knew that morning news is typically the transition that a lot of sports guys make. I knew how to be a sports anchor. I don't know. I didn't know anything about news, being a news anchor. So it took probably the first 6 months of me being in Grand Rapids to kind of get it. And long and short, we had a lot of offers from all over the country, but the feel I got with the team that I had in Grand Rapids 2 years ago made me kind of realize, all right, this is what we want to do. But the biggest difference, man, is that obviously I don't have to travel anymore. You got to stay here. You stay on that desk. But being a news anchor in the morning is that I get up well before everyone else does. So I go to bed incredibly, like in the summer, it's awful. I go to bed when the sun's up. And so you got the blackout curtains, the eye mask, and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that's the biggest difference is getting adjusted to the schedule. I learned the hard way when I first moved here, trying to watch Sunday Night Football and then trying to get up at 2:30 in the morning. Don't recommend doing that.
It doesn't seem like that's a great idea or works very well.
Not at all.
All right, we're talking with James Starks, class of 2008, two-time All-American for Capital Football. And so let's take it back to the origins of the story a little bit. Before getting to Capital, where did you come from? What was your hometown? And just talk about that place.
Toledo, Ohio, the Glass City. It's a place that is known for its high school football. At least in the northwestern portion of the state. I know the folks in the south or the northeast like to talk about all those guys over there, but we do some pretty good football too. I grew up in the Old West End neighborhood. It's an impoverished neighborhood. My parents worked for Detroit Edison and UPS their entire lives. And I went to St. Francis de Sales High School, won a state title in 2001. We beat Bishop Watterson back then. But we played against some really good football teams. We won that title in 2001. We lost in the state semifinals in 2002 to Dayton Chaminade. That's a team that had Javon Ringer on the team, who played extensively in the NFL and went to Michigan State as well. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm from. It's a blue-collar city that's still kind of large, but still small comparatively speaking to the other large cities in Ohio. But it's a you work for what you get type of place. And I think a lot of my work ethic came from St. Francis because I played under Dick Cromwell, who was a legendary coach in Ohio football. And I can't say all the stories that Cromwell told us and things he said on this podcast, but I talked to him actually yesterday. He made me a tough kid because I was undersized at the time. And, he told me you got to figure out where you fit in and how you're going to fit in, because it's not just going to come to you. You got to figure it out. So Toledo breeds tough people, like it or not.
So you were a football player. That's how we know you here at Capital. But I have this feeling that you played a few more sports growing up. What is your athletic background beyond football?
I was a baseball player who got good at football. I'm not – that's the honest way I can put it. I started playing baseball at 5. So I started with the inner city youth team, and then once the team got bigger, we ended up putting out 3 or 4 or 5 professional athletes that people don't talk about or know that this little urban baseball team put out professional athletes years down the road. Ryan Robinson went to Toledo Central Catholic, played at Miami with Ben Roethlisberger, played for the Carolina Panthers. Kent Smith went to Start, went to Central Michigan, played with the Raiders for quite a bit, and then myself. So we had a nice little youth squad, but I was a baseball player. We would go and play all the travel teams who had more resources, more money, and we would beat them bad. So unfortunately, the elementary school I went to didn't have a football team, so I played travel baseball, but also played soccer. So that's how I got good with my feet before I played football. I didn't play football until I was almost 15 years old. So I got to St. Francis, and because I hadn't been using my hands, I didn't know how to catch. I've been using my feet for so long, so it took a while because I was playing offense for quite a while. So my background is baseball, but we had to make a choice sophomore, junior year between I was still playing travel baseball, but also running track. So we had to make a choice in that part of the year. What are you going to do? And I had to give up. I chose to give up baseball, I should say, and run track. And I played football in high school. And I ran track at Capital for a couple of seasons. A couple of seasons I had some surgeries. So I've kind of done everything. We don't talk about basketball. We'll stick to what I know I'm good at or was good at.
I was going to say, I think that I saw on Facebook there was a clip there of you in the gym, and I can understand why you wouldn't want to talk. I mean, you mentioned that football kind of came into your life at a later period. So, with all these other options, when did you really begin to think that football was something that was going to be something serious in your life or significant, even beyond high school?
I think I know we had some Division I offers, but I can tell you I graduated high school at 5'5", 150. I was a tiny person. And so we had Division I offers, and they would come to the games, but I think they're expecting me to grow. I just didn't grow when they wanted me to, so the offers got pulled. And Coach Stepsis visited St. Francis, and he recruited 2 of my teammates, and I was like, yeah, I'll go. But, I had no intention of staying. I planned on leaving and transferring after freshman year. And the camaraderie that I built with those guys that freshman class, I decided to stay. And lo and behold, I came back home in the summer, and I grew 6 inches and put on 30 pounds. And then people thought I was a transfer student. They're like, who is this guy? And I'm like, it's just me, y'all. It's just me. So I grew half a foot in the summer. And then I think with the body started to kind of figure things out spatially. And, we had our first workout with the pro team after my sophomore year. The Vikings came just to talk. And I'm sitting there like, why do you want to talk to me? I don't get it. And then as things started to progress, junior year, or I'm starting to realize that I'm one of the better players in the country, I'm thinking maybe this might work out. And then you have another pro workout, and then it becomes more pro workouts in that next off season. And then I thought, we'll try to ride this train as long as we can.
That's amazing. When you were looking at colleges, you mentioned that you had D1 offers on the table. What were you looking for, and inevitably what led you to Capital? What sealed the deal too?
I think it was the coaching staff for sure. Coach Stepsis was, I want to say 27, 28, 29 years old, maybe. And Coach Step, I can relate to Coach Stepsis. Todd Stepsis was the defensive backs coach at the time. And I had a couple guys from high school who were coming with me, so I felt comfortable on the campus. My sister and her family already lived in Columbus, so I was already familiar with the city. After those D1 offers kind of fell to the wayside, I didn't really want to go to Tiffin, to go to the city of Tiffin, where Heidelberg and go to Ada, where Northern's at, kind of like it's in the middle of nowhere. And that's no knock on them, but I was already familiar with Columbus. So being on campus, the CAP Center was pretty new at the time, and just the facilities kind of drew me in. And I think Coach Stepp, spoke some words of courage to me. And I'll tell you, the first camp that we had, we had to go to the MDR. I don't know if that still exists anymore, but the MDR, James Hairston was the starting cornerback there. And I remember that first week of practice, he pulled everybody aside. He was like, "You see him right here? He's going to be an All-American before he leaves." And I'm 17 years old. I don't know what you're talking about. But he was talking about me, and people saw stuff in me that I didn't see yet. And so I think all of that kind of came together where all these other people believed in me. So it's on me to kind of believe in myself at that time.
What was the moment in which you got to Capital and then you realized that this was the right decision? I made the right call. Do you recall that moment?
In academics or just in general?
In general.
Matt Coleman. So Maddie's one of my best friends, but I think it was just a bond that I had with guys like Matt, John Spring, just guys in that freshman year class where a lot of us were on scout team, and you either swim or you drown, right? And it's hard as a freshman to know that you're not going to play a lot. And so if this isn't for you and you don't have the patience to stick this out, then you don't go do something else. And there's attrition, right? Every year there's attrition. People leave. And so the bond that I had with those guys that freshman year, Maddie and I never talked that freshman season, but we both bonded over a trip to the doctor's office in the off season. He had a bum knee and I had a bad back, and I can't tell the story on here, but we had an interesting dialogue with the doctor there, and honestly, he and I have been best friends since that day.
Amazing. We're talking with James Starks, 2-time All-American, class of 2008, member of Capital football team that was highly successful. And let's kind of go with that, dive deeper into the jock talk, if you will. You were a defensive back at Capital and one of the best in the country, hence 3-time first team All-OAC, All-Region pick, 2-time All-American. Your trophy case is full, my man. You started and saw a significant time as a sophomore, made 3 picks that year to team up with 32 tackles and a sack. Can you talk about what it was like to make such an impact so early in your career and what that meant to the team's development as well?
Well, I dropped 2 picks that year. One of them was against Otterbein. We lost that game. So you don't forget the things you did wrong. I think that sophomore year was new for everyone because we knew we had a lot of talent going into that season. I believe we were 7-3 the year before that. And, Rocky's healthy. The defense has a bunch of seniors on it for the most part. Our team was mostly a junior, senior team. And then only a couple sophomores were playing. Adam Persing on the offensive line. Matt Coleman was he was on the right side. I was on the left. And so I think for me, Coach Bickle, who was our D coordinator at the time, I think him knowing that you've got a few guys that you're going to have for a few years, it's going to allow you to do a lot of different things. And you don't have to worry about, who's next or what happens here, what happens there. And so they showed a lot of trust in me, for one, just to put me in that position early on, because I know Matt won't like this part of the story. But I knew I was starting after freshman season. Coach Stepp said, "It's you, and we got to figure out another corner." So I had to figure it out very quickly. And, going up against some of the talent we had on the other side of the ball, including Lewis Howes, we had some guys who were going to make you better. And just having that faith, especially from those guys who were seniors. The guys who are rushing the pass have to trust the folks who are behind them. And you've got this now 18, 19-year-old kid who just started playing football 5 years ago. So they had a whole lot of trust in me, and I think that helped out my confidence a lot.
That was also a year in which you began a string of 3 consecutive years that the Crusaders made the NCAA playoffs, and in that year went to the 3rd round of the tournament. What do you remember most about that impactful year and that NCAA tournament run?
I remember the most about that year is that I blew my knee out in a game I probably shouldn't have been playing in. I tore my MCL catching a ball out of bounds with 3 weeks left to go in the season. In the last game, week 10 against Wilmington, just blocking on a punt return, my ACL tore. So I was out, which you can imagine how upset all the coaches were and my parents for me playing that game. But I think what I remember most, because it was a big deal at the time because we were all healthy until I wasn't healthy. And going into the playoffs with no one who's played in the playoffs, experience means something. So what I remember most is that our team really showed its depth back when that happened, right? So a lot of the attention went towards me when the ball's in the air, and I was also very key in run support. But after I got hurt, Matt Coleman stepped up like you wouldn't believe, because now you're thrust in this action, right? And Marcus McDonough, who came in to be my backup, he also showed up. And I think what sticks out to me was the game against Wabash on the road. Matt played out of his mind. He didn't always get as many reps as I'm sure any corner would tell you that they would like, but they threw at him. They threw at him all day long, and he showed up. And so I think that was the biggest part, to see my teammates, especially the guys on defense, rally around each other, show our depth, and then get 2 pretty big wins on the road, because we went to North Central as well. And I'm just sitting there, I'm going to give you what I got while I'm on crutches and tell you what I see. And that was another year where we probably should have beaten Mount Union, lost by 3 in that regional final game. So I think that's the biggest thing that sticks out to me, is that despite me getting hurt at the worst possible time, my teammates were resilient and showed a whole lot of heart.
It's incredible that the memories are so vivid for you. And I think that most that remember that time period also remember that your defenses were just amazing. I mean, they averaged allowing just less than 14 points a game in each of those 3 seasons. Incredible. So how do you describe those defenses, their style, and how they played over that span of time?
I can tell those are some of the best defenses I've ever played on. We took it personally. If you scored, we hated it. We don't want you to have 3 points. So we took it personally, and we had one heck of a pass rush. Guys like Marty O'Malley, Matt Evans, John Spring, Joel Sigmeyer in the middle, Sam Abdullah, Bart Sparhawk on the other side playing our Will linebacker spot. And then we had the Hauslers. We got 2 more All-Americans in the secondary. So between the Hauslers and their ball hawking ability, and then the guys we got in the front 7, if you scored on us, either it was a mental error on our part or you earned it. So we took great pride, because they can't beat you if they can't score. And so we also tried to score on defense a lot, and we did. So we took all that stuff personally, and we took pride in the way we played defense. We're going to knock you in the mouth, and we're going to take the ball from you.
Now, over the course of your career, you accumulated 12 interceptions, defended 27 passes, 128 tackles. Tell us about your style, ball hawk, hard hitter. How would you have described yourself or scouted yourself?
Well, I think I was a little bit of a hybrid of both. I was at the 2 mile horn as a 4.27 40 guy, hand time, so I could move, but I also love to hit. So you kind of had to pick your poison. If you throw it underneath, you're going to get smacked. If you try to throw it deep, you're not going to catch the ball. So I think for me, I took a lot of what the Hauslers were doing. Kyle was typically known. Kyle was a freshman All-American, so Kyle knew what he was doing back there, right? So Kyle knew how to high point the ball. Where's he looking? Where's the quarterback looking? Where's his elbows and shoulders pointing? I picked that stuff up from Kyle. And then Tom would knock your head off. So I try to kind of play with a little bit of both of them, and then put my own I put a little bit of swag in it. So you on the sideline, you probably heard me talking to you one way or another. So the trash talk was not missed by anybody. But if you scouting myself, I don't know what you do. That's not arrogance. I don't know what you do because after a while we stopped getting opportunities, so teams weren't throwing the ball over there anymore. And the mindset was if they do want to throw it over there, you make them pay for it. So either you take it from them or you dislodge that football.
What do you think you would have given yourself for a Madden rating?
Oh man, that's a great question. Okay, let's say I'm gonna go with. We're gonna say I'll be like a 92. The hands might be down in the 60s though, because I did drop like 4 picks over those 3 years, and so we said the hands down. The hands gonna be in the 60s or the 70s, but the speed got to be a 98. Put me back there and return some kicks if you want to.
All right, I'm picking you for my franchise. Then. Now, those teams that you were a part of, I mean, you accumulated almost 30 wins. That's a lot to choose from, but do any stand out among the rest?
I think that junior year team in 2006, that we had senior year Rocky Pantello, if I believe right. I can't remember. I want to say we had Rock that year. But we were all loaded. We were loaded on both sides of the ball. Just again, ran it. We had home field going into the playoffs. I want to say that might have been our best defensive year statistically. And we had the Hausers too. We had one of them. We had CJ Steele, who was playing a lot too. We were loaded, and we got those home playoff games, and we blew Wittenberg and North Central out. So it kind of was. Especially that North Central game where it was close the year before in the playoffs, and this was a game where there was no question. The game was over in the first quarter. There's also a game that I remember is that, again, going up to Alliance, Ohio, and, we had all 4 seasons of in one game. It was sunny, it rained, it snowed, then it kind of overcast, like all at the same time. And that was a game I thought we should have won. And there's some things I don't like about that game. I've watched it a few times still, and those things kind of stick in your craw a little bit. The stuff that didn't go right, you still remember. But that 2016 was absolutely loaded. I think that team's the best team in the country.
Very good. We're talking with James Starks, class of 2008, 2-time All-American, to just top off the list of accolades that he's accumulated over the course of his lifetime. So life after football now, James. Mm-hmm. It's not normal that a D3 player makes a move to the NFL, but you did. Tell us about making that decision to make a serious run at an NFL career.
Well, we knew going into senior year that professional scouts had been to some games. A lot of them were watching Pierre Garçon over at Mount Union, who became, I think he was a 6th-round draft pick. But they were interested, watching things and so forth, and we knew they'd be there. But I think after they saw that senior year game where Mount came to Bexley and Pierre got shut down again. I mean, that's just what it is. He's a heck of a talent, and but at the end of the day, I knew it. I would always say 9 times out of 10 I'm gonna win that battle, and I did. And so I think that's what it was. And as we got towards the end of the season, there was a lot of talk, between Jim Collins and Coach Stapps, Coach Bickle, about what the possibilities could be. Conversation they'd already had with scouts in that area. And so we made the choice to get a personal trainer. And I worked out up in a place up in Dublin during my 2nd semester of school. And, I also worked with Butch Reynolds. He was from Ohio State. So to get my 40 down for my pro day. And that's when things became starting to get kind of real, where it's like, look, you can't be partying all the time. Despite, even though I did, can't be partying all the time, but because you got this training that you have to do 3 days a week, and you also got schoolwork and all this other stuff. So that's when I started to realize things that were real. And I think the biggest realization would be that Ohio State Pro Day snowed. It was in March, and my parents had a hard time getting down there. But you're at Ohio State, and you're there. All 32 teams are represented there. That was the year Vernon Goldstein was there. I'm just sitting here like, who are all these gigantic people? And it's just me. And that was the day that Coach Lewis introduced himself to me right before the weigh-in. Some guy tapped me on the shoulder. I'm tying my shoe. I'm in the zone. I'm like, get off me, man. I look up. I'm like, oh, it's Marvin Lewis. And he goes, good morning, James. So he knew my name, and I didn't know that he knew me. So that's when things are like, oh, this is the real deal now. So the Ohio State Pro Day was I didn't have a good workout, but I didn't have a bad workout.
Well, and you mentioned a name that kind of became, something of a big deal for you in the coming weeks after that. Talk us through, going through the workout, and then signing a contract with the Cincinnati Bengals and what that was like.
Yeah, actually, I had a second pro day. I went to Mount Union actually for the second one, and that was a better workout than the Ohio State one. And we kind of want to improve our stock a little bit, but we knew there was some interest from teams like the Giants, Steelers, the Vikings, kind of those regional teams were interested in me in some capacity. And we thought the Giants. We had an interview with the Giants at Capitol, and it seemed like that was the route they were going to go. Lo and behold, draft day comes around and they took like 4 defensive backs. So it was a stressful weekend. That's back when the draft was 3 days long, and we knew we'd be a day 3 guy. So you kind of just drive around trying to kill time, but time moves so slowly, and you can only go to the mall so many times. And we went to the end of the day, no phone call from my agent, nothing. And so we kind of thought it was a lost cause. And then the Monday came, nothing. So we figured like the window's about shut. And then around 6:30 on that Tuesday morning, I get to see my phone, open my flip phone up, and we see a 513 number. And I'm like, this is weird. And it was Jim Lippincott from the Cincinnati Bengals. And he asked me what I was doing. I was like, nothing. Let's go. So he asked me if I wanted to come to camp, and we got the contract signed. I must say the day after that.
Well, that had to have been an incredibly exciting moment for you. Are there any big takeaways beyond the contract signing from the whole workout, being amongst the team? What do you take away most from that?
The first thing I noticed when I got to Paul Brown was that I was driving a 2000 Taurus, and I see all these luxury cars in here. I'm like, am I in the right place? But it was surreal. You walk in there, Carson Palmer's and is working out in the weight room, and you just see the inner workings of a franchise happening before your eyes. And that draft class, the first round pick was Ray Mataluga out of USC. And you just see these other guys here. And I'm looking around like I'm one of the smallest people here, man. This is different. And so I think once I got there and you see a locker with your name on it, with all the gear, the logo, all the stuff there, and you're like, I haven't made, I don't want to say I've made it, but like this ain't Capitol anymore. This is the real deal. So it was an experience, to say the least. I remember the playbook was like 2 phone books deep. And gosh, I cannot remember the defensive. Well, it was Mike Zimmer. Yeah, the coach. He used to be the coach of the Vikings, if he's still there. But he was a defensive coordinator, and he was like, "Can you memorize this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I sure can. I can. Whatever. Give me some more. I'll memorize whatever you want, because you're going to be the first person to go, because you're an undrafted free agent. So you're the cheapest one there, and you're going to be the first. It's like the last hire, first fire type of deal."
Very good. Now, obviously, that dream ended a little bit prematurely, and then you began working on the next dream. Can you kind of take us through that moment, and then maybe the moments after that where you picked yourself up, dusted yourself off, and began on the next adventure?
Yeah, I broke my foot and just backpedaling, non-contact, and it's one of those things where you got guys like, I won't mention their names, I won't do that, who I know are not better than me or faster than me, and they're running by me, and I'm sitting here trying to like run, and it's just not working. There's nothing you can do. And I got sent to the trainer, and I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to put tape on my foot, and come to find out that I have incredibly flat feet. I should have been wearing insoles. I've never worn insoles. And so this was just just being genetically predisposed to breaking your feet, and got an x-ray, which I was trying to avoid because I knew something was wrong. And my foot was pretty much broken, almost in half. And it was tough. You're sitting in that training room and you're getting the news, but you kind of like the movies, it becomes white noise, because you're about to go home. And I went back outside into the locker room, and you see that red tag in your locker, and it sucks. That's the best way. It's a sinking feeling. And I know people who've been cut before and they take their gear with them, like their team issue gear. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything. I was super down. I remember getting in the car and called my dad. I bawled. I absolutely bawled because I felt like I let a lot of people down because a lot of people had, invested in me, believed in me. And this is something that, albeit now, you think about it, out of my control. But I felt like I let a lot of folks down that day by having to come home because of something silly as a broken foot. So it was tough. I was down for quite a while. And then the fast forwarding part is that luckily a couple of teammates from Capital were going overseas to play football. And they said, we need a wide receiver or a cornerback. You want to go? Sure. So I got a free trip to Italy, basically, to go play football with Rocky Pentello and Adam Persing. And so that's after a season of that, I realized I didn't want to play anymore. Just too many injuries. I wanted to be able to walk with my kids. And then also, head injuries are real. So I decided before I left for Italy to take the GRE, and I got into grad school while I was in Italy. And that's when I went back to school to get my master's.
All right, we're talking with James Starks, class of 2008, two-time All-American, in this incredible journey that you've painted the picture for us. And, now we want to just kind of talk about, we want to put you on the hot seat, James, actually.
All right.
Let's go through some rapid-fire questions that are also going to kind of dig into the feels of Capital. So I'll throw you a softball first. Who are your favorite sports teams?
New York Yankees, Dallas Mavericks, Denver Broncos, Manchester United, and I know I'm missing something. I don't know. Oh, I'm more of a Detroit Red Wings kind of guy too.
All right, very good. How about favorite athlete of all time?
That's impossible to answer. Just pick one. Yeesh.
I'll even let you give me a top three if that'll help.
Okay, fair enough. You got to start with primetime. Deion Sanders is one. Pre-steroid Barry Bonds, Pittsburgh Pirates Barry Bonds was two, and Ken Griffey Jr.
I'm all in on two of your three. So
and don't forget about Kobe. R.I.P.
All right. Oh, very good. How about favorite sports movie?
Wow, that's a tough one too, isn't it? Favorite sports movie. I don't even know if I have a favorite sports movie. I think at this stage, the only sports movie I've watched is the documentaries from our junior and senior year. Oh man, I don't. Field of Dreams is always a classic one. Yeah, man, I don't even know if I have a favorite sports movie. I don't even think I do. Space Jam. I'm going with Space Jam. Why not? Yeah, that's a classic too.
There you go. Favorite music artists?
Oh man, I've got a Prince tattoo on this arm. I'm all over the place. So between Prince and Jay-Z, Kanye, I've got a Kanye tattoo on this arm. So this is my musical arm. I'm all over the place between him, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan, Red Hot Chili Peppers. You pick it, I like it.
All right. What was your favorite pregame meal?
Matt Coleman and I, we would go to the church down the street on Livingston. We'd say a prayer, but then we'd also go to McDonald's for breakfast. So not the healthiest thing to eat before a game, but we would definitely get our McMuffins before every game.
Well, the prayers work then, I guess. But how about after the game? What'd you munch down on?
Beer, probably. Yeah, whatever's around. My parents ran the tailgate, so I used to try to stop and get a hot dog or something like that from them.
All right. When you came to Columbus, I know that you're from Toledo, so you kind of get the big city feel to an extent, but what was the biggest shock about moving to Columbus and embedding yourself there?
I think just how far away Ohio State's campus was. For some reason, I thought it was just like smack dab in the middle, but it's like almost northern Columbus or whatever. So, and I had no idea that Bexley was in the middle of the city and how far it takes to get to everything. That drive on 270 has never been fun. So I think just how spread out Columbus kind of would be the biggest shock to me.
What do you think about Columbus or Bexley that you enjoyed the most?
The support we had in Bexley was amazing. Everyone likes a winner, but even freshman year, we had tons of people. But I think once we started rattling off tons of wins, started that sophomore year in 2005, you saw our games were standing room only, and then it only became more standing room only. So the people in Bexley were amazing in terms of supporting that football program throughout my 4 years there.
Teammate that you miss the most?
I guess it's Maddie, I guess. But like I talk to Maddie like twice a week, so like I don't I don't get to see him as much as I like to, but probably Maddie. Yeah, I would go with Maddie. He'd be mad if I pick somebody else, probably.
Now, teammate that for better or for worse, you'll never be able to forget, and why? If it's
I gotta pick one. Oh man, I won't forget that time Sam Abdullah pregame headbutted someone while not wearing a helmet. So Sam split his face open before a game. It looked cool because his face was bleeding before the game, but Sam Abdullah, Don Spring, Zach McKenzie in his short shorts, Rocky being Rocky. We had a cast of characters on those teams.
There feels like there's an ESPN 30 for 30 embedded in there somewhere.
It absolutely is.
How about favorite class you took at Capital?
Probably weightlifting with Coach Bickle, because Coach Bickle let me get my workouts in, and I took an athletic training course with Robert Thorne and Benji Piecer as well. So as someone who continued to be involved in athletics and competitive CrossFit, just being able to take care of myself from the stuff that I learned from them definitely has paid dividends.
How about your least favorite class?
Humanities.
No hesitation there.
Humanities. Couldn't do it, man.
How about your favorite place on Capital's campus?
Does that include like the Bexley area, just outside the campus too?
How about let's stick on campus this time?
834 College Avenue. That's where we lived. So that was the best place for me. Our house on College Avenue was one of my favorite places to ever have lived.
How about off campus, since you were going there anyway?
Oh man. Well, if you stayed right in that Bexley area, made a lot of trips to Moe's. I know that for sure. A lot of trips to Moe's and getting some pizza down the street. And the occasional trip to Ohio State, I'd say.
And last but not least, if you were going to give a piece of advice to a current or future Crusader, what would it be?
To listen. You don't know everything, and no matter how good you think you are, it's still good to listen to people who've been there before and take constructive criticism as a way to get better and not to take it personally.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, James, for joining us on this edition of the Forward Capital Crusaders podcast. We've been talking with James Starks, class of 2008 Capital football, two-time All-American amongst a host of other accolades. Once again, a fantastic story, and thanks so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll continue forward on this edition of Forward Capital Crusaders.